Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And on tonight's episode, we're going to answer your questions as part of our January mailbag. And we're also going to get into news out of Baseball America, which just issued its top 100 prospects, which includes 5 Orioles, headlined by Samuel Basallo at number 9. And we will discuss all of that on tonight's episode. But first, as always, we want to introduce new members to our Patreon community, and for that, I will turn it over to Bob.
Yeah, they keep rolling in, keep loving this. I think we're all super excited for baseball season. A little less than 3 weeks before everybody reports to spring training. So that said, I would like to say thank you to Keith Holbrook, Zachary Druck, and Cole Sims for signing up for the Patreon. Really appreciate it. Hope you enjoy the content. We're in the middle of our top 50 countdown series, about to get into that top 30. So it's as good a time as ever to join. Appreciate it, guys.
As a reminder, right now you can join at the $3, $5, or $10 levels and have access to our top 50 prospects countdown episode, which is ongoing. And not only could you get the top 30 or so from here, but you can go back and listen to the 20 or so episodes that we've released up to this point. And then when we get into the season, bonus weekly shows from Bob, Nick, and myself, as well as monthly updates to our top 50 prospects and a whole lot more. Now, without further ado, we'll get into tonight's show, starting with the news of Baseball America has dropped its top 100 prospects list pre-2026, and the Orioles represented by 5 players this year. Catcher Samuel Basallo heads the group at number 9. He is followed by Dylan Beavers at 21st, Trey Gibson at number 72, Nate George, last year's breakout player on the position player side, at number 86, and then Luis De Leon, who we've been talking about a lot this offseason after his strong performance in the Arizona Fall League, is the 5th and final Oriole on the top 100. He came in at 95th overall. So this is an interesting mix. Yes, it's not a top 100 prospect like we were used to in the Adley, Gunnar, Jackson Holiday prospect years, but 5 total is still pretty strong, and an interesting mix in that you have 3 position players and 2 pitchers to go with that. We've been talking for a while about how some pitchers in the Orioles farm system, Gibson and De Leon in particular, need to start getting more love nationally, and that's exactly what happens here. So, Nick, I'll start with you. What's your reaction to this list?
It's definitely fun to see a couple of pitchers like Gibson and De Leon on this list, primarily because of their backstories, right? And they have an opportunity, I think, to really show the league just how good this pitching development is. Taking an undrafted arm who missed his final year of college due to non-injury reasons, developing him into a top 100 prospect, and then he's going to be the number 1 overall prospect in the Orioles system as soon as Basallo and Beavers graduate. That's just a formality at this point. And then taking a $30,000 arm in Luis De Leon and turning him into a top 100 prospect, and credit to De Leon for overcoming so much on the mental side. Learning this offseason about his severe struggles on the mental side of the game was pretty eye-opening. But yeah, these lists are fun to look at and talk about in January because there isn't much else to discuss. Even though right now I think we're all waiting on pins and needles for this Freddie Peralta trade news to officially drop. But other than that, there's nothing else to talk about. It is a good kind of gauge, though, a barometer on how the rest of the league views Orioles prospects, like the national media. And I can't sit here and say oh, Trey Gibson should be higher. What are we doing here with this list? Because I don't follow other prospects outside of the Orioles anywhere near the level I follow and understand Orioles prospects. But I follow a lot of the college guys closely when they are in school, and to see Luis De Leon 3 spots behind Hagen Smith, former Arkansas ace, 1st-round pick of the White Sox, that's massive. Parker Messick already having success in the big leagues with the Guardians, 2nd-round pick from an ACC school. He's only a couple spots ahead of Luis De Leon. So it gives you fun additional context too with a lot of these prospects. And I'm shocked Baseball America didn't put Esteban Mejia in their top 100 because they were the ones driving that insane hype train last season. He'll be there as soon as Basallo and Beavers graduate, though. And then I know they put out a couple of other articles the 20 who just missed, or the 10 or 15 or so guys primed to shoot up the list. They put De Leon on that list, but looking at this Baseball America rankings and their write-ups and grades and just knowing how they generally feel about some of these guys, I think Nate George is the guy who's going to shoot up this list because it seems like both Baseball America and Fangraphs don't seem to be big believers in this kid's power, and that's the key. He's still a kid, so if he starts flexing some power this year and like gets to Double A, I think he's could on Baseball America's list at least he could be a top 50 prospect in baseball by the end of the season. I think so. Fun list to look at.
Yeah, it's very exciting. Honestly, kind of snuck up on me. I forget that it happens like around this time every year before spring training starts. And yeah, I mean, I love seeing Trey Gibson get his just due finally on a top 100 official list. I love seeing Luis De Leon. We've been huge fans of his, the way he broke out at the end of the season. Nate George snuck on there at the end of last year, but nice to see he's still firmly attached. And I completely agree. If he starts pulling the ball at all, and especially with power, then yeah, I think he could be like top 25 type of talent on here. Most interesting to me was Dylan Beavers going from like the 80s or 90s to 21 overall, like huge rise for him. Number 5 outfield prospect in baseball, according to Baseball America now. So love to see that. That kind of confirms what we've already been talking about and seeing that he made changes that seem sticky and seems like this is kind of just who he is now. Hopefully that is the case. I also love the write-up on Luis De Leon where they gave him a 70 grade fastball, 60 grade slider, and they said he's got other breaking balls with some potential as well, and off-speed pitches, I should say. And then Esteban Mejia in the just missed column, I think it was like the 20 players that just missed. Esteban Mejia was on there. So was Michael Ferret. Miss you, buddy. And they also had every prospect who received a vote list, and the Orioles had 10 players: Basayo, Beavers, Gibson, George, De Leon, Ike Irish, Esteban Mejia, Enrique Bradfield Jr., Wahiwa Aloy, and my favorite one, Aaron Estrada. He got a vote for this list, so love to see that. I think he could sneak his way on sometime during the season.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised by this list. I figured that Basayo and Beavers were locks to make the top 100. I definitely did not see Beavers ranking as high as he did, though. But I kept thinking about Gibson and De Leon. Okay, it's going to take another half season, or maybe it takes a month at AAA for Gibson to start getting on these lists. But to see them here and now is a really, really pleasant surprise. And I agree with you, Bob, and Nick as well. If Nate George just hits for a little bit of power this coming season, he is going to shoot up these lists. The fact that he's got some question marks about the power, but he's still ranking this high at this point in his career is very encouraging.
Yeah, sorry, I'm looking as more news comes out about the Freddie Peralta trade. It just seems like it's definitely about to cross that finish line. But yeah, a lot of exciting, and we've talked about this a ton, obviously, but this farm system is so deep now, and it's cool to see the 5 players there. Obviously, Basayo and Beavers are going to graduate pretty early in the season. Then you might see Mejia or Ike Irish sneak onto the back end of the list. But there's a lot of guys, there's probably 15, 20 guys that could be contenders for a top 100 list over the next year or two, just sitting in the system right now.
Yeah, I'm also trying to find this news, and I'm muting myself, so I missed some of that conversation, what you guys talked about. But
I'm just hopeful that this means
Yeah.
Framber Valdez, like, you have no other choice now. Just come home to Baltimore.
Well, now it's looking like Brandon Sproat, Jet Williams for Freddie Peralta, and Tobias Myers, former Oriole. We'll work some former Orioles friends into this segment. Anyway, the list. Yeah, it's like I said, fun to talk about right now. And Dylan Beavers, like I know he's like technically still a prospect, but just formality. Like, did anyone see, even if you were high on Beavers and believed in, okay, this organization could make the adjustments that they needed to make, go back to John Mioli's kind of case study that he did with Dylan Beavers and the swing. Like, did anyone truly believe we would be sitting here talking about Dylan Beavers as a top, was he 21 prospect in baseball and a guy who could be like a pretty huge contributor for the Baltimore Orioles in the major leagues this year? I honestly did not. So, and I was high on Beavers, but like you figure, right, maybe like at best a platoon outfielder, which is what he could be in the majors this year, but like hitting as well as he is in the majors last year, and to see him this highly ranked, I think that's just another testament to this player development system.
Yeah, I completely agree because if I had drawn up the best case scenario for Beavers going into last season, it would have been maybe back end top 100 prospect where we're sitting here right now talking about, well, could he have been higher? And if he's not higher, then why is that? Is it because he doesn't hit for enough power or the strikeout's still too high? That's what I would have thought. I would not have expected top 21 prospect in the whole sport coming off of a month and a half or so in the majors that went very well. So that's really encouraging for his development.
Yeah, I think he's a guy, rumors that he could be potential part of a trade for a top of the rotation starter. I don't know. I was already against it. I just think he's going to be an integral part to the corner outfield spots moving forward, especially after seeing the way he adjusted. And I just think his skill set right now is very much needed on this team. Take long, good at bats, get on base, got some pop, you can steal. We know he's got the athleticism to be a plus outfielder eventually. Think he's going to get there. Yeah, just like a consistent 5-tool rock, some guy you can set in the 6th hole in your lineup and just feel, or even higher, who knows, but just feel really good about it, not have to worry so much. I mean, obviously in the right deal, I would do it, but I think he could be like another, I've said it before, but like a Nick Markakis type where he's good at everything. He's just consistently in the lineup. And then 6 years down the line, it's Orioles Hall of Fame. I don't know. Maybe getting a little ahead of myself there. But yeah, I'm rather not trade Dylan Beavers.
And real quick, let's unofficially kick off the mailbag with this question from Timothy in our YouTube comments here. Over under 10 home runs for Beavers this upcoming season. Bob, I'll throw it back to you to start this one.
Easy over. He showed really good power against right-handed pitching, at least. Left-handed pitching, not as much. He has good contact ability against lefties, but he doesn't really impact the ball the way he does against righties. I'll say over 15, creeping up towards 20. That would be my prediction.
Looking at projections, I think these look pretty good. Like if we're using oopsie projections, that oopsie is the one that incorporates like bat speed and stuff like that, right? That's the better one for hitters. They've got 12 home runs, 107 WRC plus, like 11% walk rate, 12% walk rate, 23% strikeout rate. Like I think that's pretty solid if you can get that from Dylan Beavers this year. Because yeah, even if he platoons, he's going to be hitting against right-handed pitching. So I think we should see a lot of him. Yeah, give me 13 home runs for Dylan Beavers.
What do they have for plate appearances?
I just closed it out, but they have Oopsie has him at 371 at bats.
I think he'll get closer to 450, but
427 plate appearances.
Okay, that's fair. I'd say 15, but I guess 12 is okay too. I'll take a 107 WRC plus for sure.
Yeah, I'll go in the 10-15 range. I think that's definitely plausible this year. Now, as we get into our mailbag, Bob and Nick have both alluded to this, but we're recording this Wednesday night. It's almost 9:30 Eastern as I'm talking at this moment. And the news about Freddie Peralta being dealt to the Mets is breaking as we're on the air. So we might have an answer about that later on in the mailbag. And of course, if you're watching live and you have a question about that or anything else related to this offseason, feel free to drop it in the comments, whichever platform you're watching us, whether that's on Twitch, YouTube, or Facebook. I'm going to start in with the first question from our mailbag, though, which comes from Bobby Jones. What is your level of comfort with the Orioles going into the season as is? So in other words, no other significant moves, just this roster as is. Nick, I'll start with you.
I'm probably at like on a scale of 1 to 10. Question didn't ask that, but I'll do
20
a 1
to 80.
No. That would be smarter. I'd say on a 1 to 10, I'm like a 7. Like it's still, if I'm kind of thinking through all aspects of the roster right now, like it's still the same cautious optimism with Albernaz. like that I talked about after the hire, and he said all the right things. We've heard some really positive things, especially with his like direct interaction with some of the younger players that I've enjoyed hearing. But he's still a first-year manager. We got to see like the small victories pile up, like fundamental defense, get those small W's pile up, and hopefully snowball in the right direction. You look at with all the coaching turnover, the pitching coaches are all still here. There's strong belief in this pitching staff. I don't think Kyle Bradish is going to be really held back this year. I think he's going to be unleashed in 2026 as long as he stays healthy. I'm excited. I'm getting more and more excited for Shane Baz as we get closer to the season. I like where this rotation is miles ahead of where it was last year. Do I want it to be improved? Absolutely. If we're kind of one of the last remaining teams in Oframber at this point, that'd be great. But I would like to see another strong addition to the rotation, but even where it's at right now, it's so much better. Zach Eflin, talking about him as the potential number 5 instead of being used on opening day is strong. The bullpen, it just feels like no one's really mentioned Ryan Helsley since he signed. That's another move that I've coming around more and more on. I think that could end up being a really great signing. If he can turn things around, the lineup, I read this offseason as like the front office still are very strong believers in the core. Yeah, there was a lot of coaching turnover. There's going to be all new voices on the hitting side, but like Adley, Holiday, Gunnar, Westberg, Cowser, I feel like the organization still truly believes in this group, and they finally gave them the help that they needed in Pete Alonso and Taylor Ward. And so, yeah, I'm a huge believer in some of these bounce back guys. I don't have to tell you guys how I'd go to war right now for Colton Cowser. Jackson Holiday's still, 21, 22 years old, and he took a step forward last year. I like where the damage this lineup could potentially do. And yeah, I'm say about a 7, acknowledging that there's still a lot of questions and unknowns, but this roster is much improved and a lot more optimistic going into this season than I think we were last season.
I'm of two minds. I do agree 7, I think, would be my grade as well on a 1 to 10 scale. I think realistically, it's a B+ offseason, even if they do literally nothing else from here. I think it's been excellent. I love the Shane Baz trade. Love getting Pete Alonso in here. Taylor Ward. Did you give up too much in Grayson? Potentially, but you really upgraded the lineup there. You got your closer with Helsley. Bring Zach Eflin back on a team-friendly deal. I think, as is, we should be borderline, or at the very least, like playoff contention. I think we're pretty much a playoff team as long as health, knock on wood, and the core getting back to what we expected them to be. You add Beavers and Basayo. I mean, this lineup's loaded. The pitching's pretty good. I think there's breakout candidates in the bullpen, but at the same time, you've done this much. There's one missing piece right at the top of that rotation. Like we've talked about, Framber Valdez would look pretty good right there, and have Valdez, Bradish, Rogers, Baz, Kramer with Eflin as a 6/ who knows. That's pretty legit. And yeah, with the Dodgers saying they're out on starting pitchers, the Mets just trading tentatively to be determined for their big starting pitcher acquisition. A lot of teams, Yankees, they just overpaid hilariously for Cody Bellinger. It just seems like Framber is inevitable. Maybe it doesn't happen, but if it doesn't, I think you still need to go out and trade for that middle to top of the rotation starter, because you've come this far. You might as well go all in. The salary, the payroll it's less than it was last year at this point still, so there's room to be had there, plus what the way Rubenstein and company have been talking. I think they could add up to 3 more guys before this offseason is said and done. But if this is it, I still feel pretty comfortable. I still feel pretty good going into 2026, much more optimistic than I was when 2025 ended.
Yeah, I think if I had to assess this team right now, I would say that it should be at least competing for the last wild card spot. It is a little bit short of the AL East in my mind.
Frozen?
Yeah, I think Zach froze.
Oh no.
Yeah, to go off his point though, I think when you compare it to the rest of the AL East, I will say like the Yankees, I'm not falling into the trap again of just saying, oh, they're one Aaron Judge injury away of that thing collapsing. I'm not doing that again. That's a pretty solid team, and they're gonna get Garrett Cole and Carlos Rodon back at some point next year. Boston, I honestly really like what Boston has done. I know their lineup is maybe not the scariest in the division, but I still think Boston's going to be tough. The Blue Jays, they were in the World Series last year and they added Dylan Cease and other pieces. I also really like what the Blue Jays have done. I think they're going to be a very strong team this year. I see a lot of underestimating of what the Blue Jays potentially could be. I think this is a very good team and a very good franchise. And the Rays are the one that's kind of like, what are they traded away like everybody? Brandon Lau's gone, Boz is here. Like they traded other pieces as well. So they may be on the outside looking in, but yeah, the East is definitely going to be a bloodbath. I feel like this year, the offseason is not done yet. More moves could still be made. More trades could happen. Boston, I feel like, could be a team that makes a big trade. Hopefully, the Orioles sign Fromber or make a big trade themselves. But yeah, I think going into this year, though, you do feel pretty optimistic. And there's like complete wild cards. Like, what if Basayo projections are in love with Basayo, which you normally don't see for the rookies? Projections love Basayo. We know what his potential is, but it's unrealized at this point, obviously. Who is Adley Rutschman? Like that's a question I have. I think a lot of people have that. Who is he? If he can stay healthy and rebound this year, I think that could help take this lineup to another level. And it looks like Kobe Mayo's sticking around. And so, like, where does he play? Like, can he play a third base? Because it's going to be really hard to see him get time like first base DH. So if he's going to be playing some third base, like, can he play to a level where the organization trusts putting him out there? Does Albernaz trust putting him out there at third base when he wants him in the lineup? And can he build on those September numbers that we've talked about all offseason? Yeah, and then also still Tyler O'Neill sitting right there, like completely
X factor.
Yeah, you just completely forget about Tyler O'Neill still on this roster as well. So yeah, a lot of questions and a lot of what ifs, but at least it's like there are multiple different paths I see for like this offense clicking and coming together. And last year, like you just didn't see that going into the year.
Yeah, say Tyler O'Neill spends 80% of the season on the IL again. You still have Ward, Cowser, Beavers, and Reed Trimble, and all these guys to fill in. Leody Taveras, the one and only. Yeah, Adley. For all the questions with Adley, it's kind of funny because literally every single projection system, the 6 on Fangraphs, have him between 3 and 4 WAR player. The lowest WRC plus prediction is a 109. Most of them are 115. Oopsie's 116. So they're pretty confident. And yeah, Oopsie has Basayo at a 118 WRC plus in his rookie season. That's pretty wild. Yeah, it's just, oh, hey, there you go, Zach. We were killing time for you to come back and finish your answer.
Okay, so picking up where I left off, I agree with both of you said, that I feel cautiously optimistic about this team. Right now, if I had to assess it, I would say maybe competing for one of the last 2 wildcard spots would be a realistic outcome. The outfield is the one area of the roster that I don't think is being talked about enough that does concern me, because on paper it is a solid group going into next year, but you can easily poke holes in it. And it's like, what if the league adjusts to Dylan Beavers? What if Tyler O'Neill's injury history repeats itself? What if Colton Cowser doesn't take the step forward at the plate that we want to see? And it looks like a much weaker group all of a sudden. And then I agree with you, Bob. I just think that adding one more starter, whether it's Framber Valdez, trading for Joe Ryan, whatever it has to be, is the one thing that puts this offseason over the top. It's already been a very good offseason. It's been the best offseason the Orioles have had in over a decade. But there is just that one missing piece there.
Yep. All right. Before we do an hour and a half on this, which we totally could, we'll move on to the next question from Matt, who says, who has more home runs this season, Gunnar, Taylor Ward, or Pete Alonso? Bob, who's leading the team?
Well, it's really hard not to say the polar bear because he as everyone in the media has been saying. He posts, he shows up, he's going to be in there every day. Left field was brought in a little bit last year. I think he's parking 35 plus homers. Ward, I'd say, is like a 30 plus guy. And I do like that Gunnar, it seems like the shoulder stuff he ended up dealing with that was kept quiet all season long. I mean, he still had a really good season, in my opinion, but might have affected the launch angle and being able to elevate the ball as much. So I think he's going to be at least like a 25 plus guy as long as everything goes the way you would expect it to. But it's got to be Pete Alonso, in my opinion.
Yeah, I wanted to come in with a hot take and say, oh, it's going to be Gunnar, and here's why. But I do think it is going to be Pete Alonso. You just can't go against the track record that Alonso has. And I was looking at Steamer projections in preparation for this, and they have Alonso with 35 homers in 148 games. Now, if I'm not mistaken, in a 162 game season, that would be one of the lowest games played total in Alonso's career. So let's say he gets to 155 games. That's another week. 2 more homers is a very realistic possibility at that point. They have Taylor Ward at 24 and 139. I think the games played and the home run total can be higher. And then Gunnar at 26 and 141. If Gunnar gets to 25 last year, that number is higher. But I think last year it did put a dent in some of the projections coming into this season. So I think that Alonso is going to finish first. And then coin toss for me between Ward and Henderson. For who goes second, I would probably go with Henderson, but it should be close.
Yeah, and looking at some of the other projections, like Oopsie, the Bad X, and ATC all have Pete Alonso at 37, 38. So that's that extra playing time there that you mentioned. And then Taylor Ward at like 27, 28. So a pretty healthy lead there for Pete Alonso potentially. I agree. I think it's going to be Pete Alonso, but I do think it's pretty reasonable to think that the Orioles could have like 3 30-plus home run guys in this lineup this year, at least.
I think Basayo is a sneaky candidate to lead the team in home runs, to be honest with you. I'm scared how much he could have improved over this offseason, just based on the past and how he has made leaps between every single season. So could be fun.
Yeah. If Adley can stay healthy and spend a lot of time behind the plate, and if Basayo's first base DH, and I figure he'd probably be more primarily DH than first base, like, yeah, just let the kid do what he was supposed to do with the plan. I'm sure it was supposed to be last year, and letting him settle in at the plate without catching. If he has that opportunity, yeah, I don't hate it.
We said, I think since the first video we ever saw of Samuel Basayo, Yordan Alvarez as a catcher. We're almost there, man. We are almost there. All right. Next question is from Half, recent patron convert. Thank you. Hope you've been a good member on the Discord. By the way, thank you, Reddit, Orioles Reddit. We have like 20 new Discord people showing up because of a post on there. After Gunnar and Pete, which Oriole is most likely to be a starter in next year's All-Star game? Zach?
I think it's Jackson Holiday. Last year, I think Holiday was one bad slump away from possibly beating Gleyber Torres out for the starting role in the American League. And then he just stopped hitting at the wrong time. Torres stayed steady, and he got the nod. Now, I pulled this up, which is OPS from the last 5 second basemen to start for the American League in the All-Star game. And you go back to 2021, Marcus Semien in a great season with Toronto, 870 OPS over the first half. The following year, Jose Altuve had an 886 OPS over the first half. He got replaced by Andres Jimenez as a starter because of an injury. But then you look at the last 3 years. Marcus Semien, 775 OPS in 2023 through the first half. Following year, Marcus Semien, when he didn't deserve to be the starter, was named starter again, 703 OPS. Gleyber Torres last year, 812 OPS. Now, OPS maybe is not the most comprehensive offensive stat, but I think it provides a useful snapshot in this case, which is that the barrier offensively for Jackson Holiday is a lot lower than it is for, say, Taylor Ward, who would have to compete with a very crowded slate of corner outfielders to get the nod. Gunnar is going to be neck and neck with Bobby Witt Jr. So some of these guys have tough competition, but I don't really know that Holiday does in the American League right now among second basemen. So If he's has a 780 OPS in late June, when he's had the hype that he's had over a period of years, he has the name recognition he has honestly the general likability that I think he has. He'll get the vote from the fans. I have no doubt about that. I think that he will get in at that rate because he was circling it last year, and the competition I just don't think is going to be very strong this year.
Yeah, that was my pick too. Just looking at that competition, it's who Glaber Torres and Josh Chisholm. Is that pretty much it? I mean, I running through some of the roster resource depth charts earlier. There's really no one. I mean, Simeon's out. Simeon's in the NL now. Brandon Lau, I think he played. I don't know where he played more at last year, second base or outfield at
He's
this
in
point.
Pittsburgh.
Yeah, he's gone. So like, you have a couple of the options there got moved out. Some of the second base, the currently listed second base options on even some of these good teams, you're like, I didn't even know you were on that roster. So yeah, I agree. I think it's Holiday.
Yeah, I hate to make it a clean sweep, but I'm really bullish on a breakout season for Jackson Holiday, and I think it's the weakest position. So I would say him. I would say Adley would be my second choice, just because obviously I think Cal Raleigh is going to win the starting role, but if he gets hurt and Adley bounces back, I think we could see it.
Go over now to this question. We're going to go back to Bobby Jones for this one. And this is a tongue-in-cheek question, but I had to work this in because we have to talk about this news. His question is, what package would you all put together to acquire Jorge Mateo at the trade deadline? And really the question I want to get at here is that the Jorge Mateo era has ended. He signed with the Braves earlier this week on a major league contract. I know that Mateo was a very polarizing player among Orioles fans. I know we had our own feelings about him. We don't necessarily need to rehash all of them tonight unless we want to for therapeutic reasons. But let's get into that. Your thoughts on Jorge Mateo officially not being an Oriole, starting with Nick.
Have fun in Atlanta. I'm more devastated that Ha-Seong Kim is going to miss all that time for slipping on ice back home in Korea. Like, come on, man. Yeah, I've got a used candle on my desk here next to my computer. I wouldn't trade that for Jorge Mateo at this point. Good luck. Have fun. I'm glad this is the last time we will ever talk about him. Look, he had his moments, but yeah, enjoy Atlanta.
Tantalizing, exciting player. Very frustrating, bad player. Also, like the duality of man. But our long national nightmare is over. Jorge Mateo is no longer a Baltimore Oriole officially. Now, if only Ryan Mountcastle could be next. No, we're always going to have our guys that are, the team loves for some reason, and we're like, okay, I think we can move on now. But they kind of just hang on. And honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if Ramon Urias comes back. He still hasn't signed. He's a free agent. Was non-tendered, I believe. I would not be surprised if they brought him in on like a 1 year, $3 million deal, and he could be the reserve infielder and let Jeremiah Jackson go back to AAA Norfolk to start the season. But they kind of go hand in hand, Urias and Mateo outlasted Urias because of the trade. But if Urias comes back, then he wins. Long live
I think the Braves should sign Urias. Just bring the whole thing full circle. Let that argument go to another fan base. But yeah, 2022, Jorge Mateo was a lot of fun. And then we didn't get anything close to that again for the next few years. He had that one good playoff game against
April
the Rangers.
2023. He was like the best player in baseball.
Yeah. So
and then what happened?
Exactly. So good luck to him in Atlanta.
Oh, yeah. Well, we'll move on to pitching prospects now, our specialty. This is from RCT Go 21. The uppercase, lowercase messed me up there. How many pitching prospects lose their rookie eligibility in 2026? Zach?
I've got a relatively small list, and I hope it stays that way because that means the pitching depth at the major league level holds up. I do think that Chase McDermott's rookie eligibility will run out this year. I think he gets enough innings or at least enough days on the roster for that to happen. Yaramil Geraldo is another name to keep an eye on. And then, according to Baseball America, Baseball Reference, Cade Stroud has not lost his rookie eligibility. I kind of have question marks about that. But if he hasn't, then look for that to run out very early in 2026. And then I think one of, but not both, Anthony Nunez or Cameron Foster will lose their rookie eligibility this year. If I had to pick one, I would go with Nunez because I'm more confident in his pitch mix, allowing him to be in the majors for good when he gets called up, whereas Foster might be more in that up and down role. But I do think one of those two lose their rookie eligibility. I don't have anybody beyond that, which means that going into next season, Nestor Herman, Levi Wells, and Trey Gibson are all still prospect eligible.
Cade Stroud has surpassed his rookie eligibility. 74 days on the roster. You need 45 to no longer be eligible. So Fangraphs wins again over Baseball Reference. I think I have the same guys. Chase McDermott, Anthony Nunez was going to be another one of my picks. And I was trying to find someone sleeper, but on the pitching side, yeah, I think a lot of guys will make their major league debuts. They'll get to the majors, but I just don't see too many other than McDermott and Nunez, or maybe another reliever, like you said. I just don't see them staying on the roster for 45 days or pitching 50 plus innings. So I have the same choice.
Yeah, and the trade is official. It's Freddie Peralta and Tobias Myers for Jet Williams and Brandon Sprott. Freddie Peralta is a Met.
Okay.
So now it's 9:48. So we got an hour and a half. Maybe we stay on, and for that 11:30 p.m. Fromberg news drop, hopefully.
Yeah, that'd be
anyway.
Amazing.
Yeah, I agree. It would be nice though if someone in like the Trey Gibson, Nestor Herman, Levi Wells tier, if someone in that tier, just like whether it's a spot start or they need an arm and they bring up one of these guys, they're like, you're having a good time in AAA, things are going well. We're gonna bring you up for whatever reason. I know it's a very un-Orioles thing to do, but it would be nice to see one of those guys get a shot and then like we can't send this guy back down. And have them take off. But yeah, I think it's some of the layup picks there.
All right. So next question is, yes, Ben Dorst, Orioles Stats 1. How do you see 2026 going for Cade Povich and Brandon Young? Nick?
Povich, if Povich remains in the organization and doesn't make the rotation out of spring, like if there's another team who's high on Povich and he can help you land a bigger arm, then fantastic. I'm all aboard. But having him as the next man up just feels really good right now. And he's got less than 200 MLB innings under his belt. And so it takes time for pitchers to really start to feel comfortable on the mound. And I think Povich is entering that territory. So he's entering year 3. He's going to get to that 200 inning mark. I think we're at a point where you could potentially see a jump from Povich. And I know he had it was a 5.21 ERA across 112 innings last year, but it was a 350 batting average on balls in play. Like that's high. The FIP and XFIP were both like a run lower, more than a run lower. The XFIP was 3.95. So like not saying just better batted ball luck and better defense behind him, Povich is going to magically become a sub-4 ERA pitcher, but those things will help. And I'm not a pitch design expert. A lot of that is getting deep in the weeds for me. I'd love to, but I'll leave others to put all this in a bigger context and understanding. But what I see is the videos online of like back in October of Povich immediately getting in the lab over at Tread, working on his pitch design, adapting the fastball to work better at the top of the zone. There's another video of him working on the curveball and changes that pitch is undergoing to better attack lefties with. Like, I'm curious to see what all that looks like in the spring. And if he can, start regularly making it through a lineup twice. I think the ERA was sub-3 first time through the order and 5.5 the second time. So, and a lot of extra base hits allowed the second time through the order. So I don't think it's outrageous to believe that Povich can still develop into like a solid arm at the back of your rotation. And I hope we get through a spring where he's in a good place and Povich can settle in AAA with his revamped arsenal, go down to Norfolk, really refine it, be in a great place, and then be ready when called upon. And And with Brandon Young, kind of the same thing. Just hopefully the rotation's in a position where he can go to Norfolk, continue to work as a starter. Like, I'm sure there have been some changes to his arsenal as well. See what played last year and didn't play in the big leagues and what he needs to potentially find more success with. But I also think Young could be an asset out of the bullpen down the stretch. Like, he can give you length if you need it. The walk rate was solid in the majors. One of the better location plus marks among Orioles pitchers in the majors last year. It's like, it's not outstanding, but solid. 65th percentile ground ball rate in the majors as well, which is solid. Maybe instead of, he was sitting, 93, 94 last year. If he can sit 95, 96 out of the bullpen, get good ground balls, hit his spots, not walk guys, like, I think he could potentially find himself a nice little home in the Orioles bullpen this year. So
Yeah, I kind of feel like both of those guys start the year back in Norfolk if they're still in the organization. A lot of that depends on whether or not we see a big trade between now and the start of spring training. If I had to guess which one of the two is going to get more big league innings, I think it's going to be Povich because, as Nick just touched on, I think he's putting in a lot of good work this offseason. The fact that he's left handed and that he has more big league innings up to this point than Brandon Young doesn't hurt either. Honestly, though, I could see either one out of the bullpen. You know, if the Orioles don't add another lefty before this offseason ends, maybe there's a case that if Povich has a good spring, for sticking him in a multi-inning relief role rather than putting him in Norfolk's rotation at the beginning of the year. I think Young is going to start back in Norfolk unless they don't add another starter and Zach Eflin isn't healthy out of the gate. Then you get into a competition in spring for the number 5 spot. Otherwise, I think that Young does start this season back in Norfolk's rotation. But as Nick said, there's reason to believe that stuff could play up in the bullpen.
Yeah, it's kind of boring episode, guys. We agree too much. I think ideally, given if they do acquire another starting pitcher or if Eflin's ready to go right away, these guys are starting every day, at least in the first half in AAA, in case you need them. I think these are incredibly solid depth, like your 7th, 6th, 7th, 8th starting pitchers on your depth chart. These guys are incredible to have, that have options and experience and should only be getting better. But I think you keep them in the Norfolk rotation in the first half of the season in case you need them. But I do feel like both of these guys could be assets out of the bullpen in the second half if the pitchers are looking healthy and durable. I think these guys, especially Young, I think his stuff could play up pretty well out of the bullpen. Povich, I think, look, if Keegan Aiken can be a somewhat effective left-handed reliever for a few years, I think Povich could certainly be as well. Or maybe if, we have some guys that may be on innings limits, or at least if you might want to go to a 6-man rotation for a little bit, these are really important guys to have available to help you do that. Also, I feel like if they're rocking and rolling in AAA Norfolk and looking good, trade deadline's coming up. These are great pieces, especially because you're hoping that the Trey Gibsons, Nestor Ermans, Levi Wells, Luis De Leons of the world are going to be coming up right behind them and maybe have some more upside if these guys are performing in teams like them at the trade deadline. Really, really solid trade pieces to have available.
Stick with pitching as a topic here as we go to this question from Yoni. Who are your 2 breakout pitchers from this year, from the 2024 draft class? Bob, I'll start with you here.
Thanks. Let's see. 2024 draft class, 2 breakout pitchers. Okay. It's tough because I think it could be guys that we didn't even get to see pitch last year. I think it could be Isaiah Salinas and Christian Rodriguez. I think those are 2 really good options. Or do I think that, what is his name? I'm already forgetting. The guy that was like the 5th round draft pick in 2024 that had a really bad year.
Chase
Chase
also.
also.
Yes, Chase Salsa. Maybe he goes through those growing pains and he's worked hard. Who knows what these guys are doing in the offseason? It's one of my favorite things in early spring when you get to see data and you see Ryan Log come out throwing 100 miles per hour in a major league spring training game. Stuff like that is really fun to see. Maybe he's one of those guys that really breaks out, but it's tough because I feel like we've already gotten a couple breakouts from the 2024 draft with Gongora and Carson Dorsey, who obviously only played the last 2 or 3 months plus the AFL. He's coming up on our top 50 countdown. Spoiler alert. So maybe I'll go with Dorsey and Salinas. Final answer.
I like it. I also just like the question a lot that Yoni said. I rock with this pitching development. Don't give me one breakout from last year's class. Give me two. My picks. My first one. I'm gonna go and take a stab at Jack Crowder. I want to see if something's there. Like I don't know if I'm fully bought into that quite yet, but I wrote about him a couple weeks ago over on our Substack. 9th round pick out of Illinois. It's a senior sign. He only got like $30,000, but yeah, had an up and down college career. But he was one of like the top high school pitching prospects in the country, one of the better high school pitching prospects in the country. I think he was like number 1 or number 2 in Illinois. I don't know how Illinois prep baseball ranks nationally, but still, like he turned down, I think, a lot of big offers to stay home and go to Illinois, and he struggled to stay in shape. He struggled to maintain good relationships, it seems like, with the coaching staff. He lost his role when he was in college, but then going into his senior year, he lost 25 pounds. He turned everything around. He started hitting 95 and holding his velo into outings, and you look at his numbers, he had a 6.3 ERA with Delmarva once he made his pro debut. He got a little bit of a late start to the year, but it was a 3.34 FIP and a 3.18 XFIP with a 25.5% strikeout rate and an 8% walk rate. So solid numbers there. End of the year in high A, had a sub 3 FIP, and the strikeout rate went up to 27%. So it's good fastball, good life. Curious to see what he looks like across 100 plus innings. Hopefully next year in high A and potentially double A. And yeah, my other one, I'm gonna go with I'll say Gongora has like a true breakout, just because like if you're a patron, the full Gongora top 50 episodes posted last week, but the velo's up even more. He touched 98 from the left side last year, and he talked a lot about being a sponge last season, just a lot of focus in the weight room since being drafted, revamping his changeup into a pitch he feels confident with. He missed a couple weeks with shoulder inflammation. He took a comebacker to the head. Like he was eased into the season initially and still struck out almost 30% of guys he faced last year. So yeah, I'll go with Crowder and Gongora there.
I'm going to start with Carter Rustad. I thought that Rustad put together a really nice year last season between Aberdeen and Chesapeake. But you look at his numbers after he got to Double A: 19 innings, 3.32 ERA, 2.87 FIP, to go to 25.3% strikeout rate. Eric Longenhagen had written over at Fangraphs early in the season that Rustad's fastball was up from his time in college at Missouri. He'd been sitting 92, 93 in his last season in college. Beginning of last year, 94 to 96, the fastball. The stuff to me looks really good. And given that he seemed to only get better as the year goes along, that could be a pure relief prospect that really breaks out this year. And then I also have Isaiah Salinas. And to give a little bit more background on Salinas, 17th round pick out of Collie County Community College in Kansas in the 2024 draft. Missed all of last year with an injury, but if you follow us on X recently, we did share a video from a workout facility that I don't have the name of in front of me at the moment. We did share a video from there showing that Salinas was throwing on the mound. He was sitting 89 to 92 with the fastball in his last year of JUCO to go to changeup and a curveball 74 to 77, and a changeup sitting at 82 to 84. So 3 pitch mix that looks kind of interesting. I don't know, given that he had the injury last year, how much we see him this season, but maybe at the worst, he's one of those guys that begins the year in the FCL and gets some good run down there before we see him over the final couple of months in Delmarva.
Like a whole big group of 2025 guys you haven't seen yet, and a couple 2024 arms as well. Looking forward to all those. We'll go with another question from Half, and this is going to talk about international prospects. So plant your flag. Out of these international prospects, who would you pick to have the biggest breakout next season? It is breakout. It is overall breakout season on this week's episode. But his options were Ellis Cuevas, Joshua Lorenzo, Steven Martinez, or Jordan Sanchez. Who has the biggest breakout year, Bob?
Well, I'm torn between my heart and my head. My heart says Joshua Lorenzo, just because I want to see him be this big right-handed masher. I've compared him to Kobe Mayo, potentially similar type of skill set at the plate, at least coming up. But I think it's Jordan Sanchez. I think he's really underrated right now, at least nationally. I just have a feeling he just has that X factor where he's just a baseball player. He knows how to hit. I feel like he's hit no matter what. Just he might be a little bit old for the DSL at 18 or whatever, and 19 this past year in the FCL, slightly old for the competition. I don't know. I think he looks like every bit the part of a power hitting corner outfielder. Love the swing. Give me Jordan Sanchez.
Yeah, the correct answer is Jordan Sanchez. I think that of this group of players, he's the one that's the most likely to break out. I would be curious to see what we get from Cuevas this year because I thought he was going to break out last year, and I think injuries unfortunately just got in the way. And hopefully, if he starts this year in Frederick, there's an opportunity for him to get a lot of run in the outfield because I think that could be where he's at his best long term. Let him flash that speed out there. And then for the other two, Lorenzo, it's just a matter of whether or not he finally taps into that power over a full season. Martinez, there's a lot of raw athleticism there, but also a lot of swing and miss to his game. That said, he was still only 17 when he got to Delmarva last year. So that's a guy you've got to be patient with, give him a little bit of time to develop, and you could have something. But for now, I think Sanchez is the safest and best pick of this bunch.
I'll go Joshua Lorenzo then. Just because he's still only 19. He doesn't turn 20 until August. But he's still got 54 games with Delmarva last season. So pretty healthy sample. He should know exactly what to expect this year when he starts back in Delmarva. I don't see why they would push him up to Aberdeen or Frederick at this point. He'll be back in Delmarva. I know the Orioles probably won't do this because, defensive versatility, but I like to see him keep him at third base. I think that would be nice. He split his time between third and short last year, and I think every report you read on him agrees he's better suited for third. And if you've got potentially like Cobb Hightower and Elvin Garcia and some others in Delmarva, like those can be your short subs. Luis Almeida's still there. I put Luis Almeida at first base, I think, at this point. But I'd like to see Lorenzo get the opportunity to be the primary third baseman, and maybe the defensive stability will help him ease in at the plate a little bit more, and he could just be one of those guys that really blossoms in year two, especially after all that missed time with the knee injury and being aggressively pushed at a young age. I could see a nice, fun breakout for Joshua Lorenzo this year.
All right, here's another important question from Kevin Brown. Should Ryan Mountcastle and Gunnar Henderson use the same walk-up songs this year? My toddler loves them both very much. Zach?
If your toddler loves them, then yes, they should keep them because if you have a toddler that is content at a baseball game, there shouldn't be anything that comes in the way of that. So by all means, keep your walk-up songs. That includes Gunnar Henderson, who I think I actually called on him to stop using Sweet Escape on air a year or two ago. I'll rescind that for the sake of Kevin. I do have this to add on, though. Dear Maria, Count Me In, which is Ryan Mountcastle's walk-up song, has a very specific Baltimore tie-in because of All Time Low. If he's on the Marlins next year, is anybody in Miami going to care if he uses Dear Maria, Count Me In as his walk-up song?
I was going to say, I don't think the Orioles would approve of allowing a visiting player to use their own walk-up song of choice. So I don't think you're going to get both those songs at the same time in Baltimore this year.
I don't think the Pirates fans are going to care what their bench player has for a walk-up song in Mountcastle, and Gunner can do whatever he wants.
By the way, real quick, just shout out to our old friends at Full Tilt Brewing. That's question reminded me of Beer Maria, Count Me In, one of their better tie-ins over the years there. Let's go to this question now from Daddy Batty, which is, what's the most likely spring training scenario aside from injuries that would have immediate implications for the major league team, i.e., Trey Gibson goes crazy and is put in the rotation from day one? Nick, I'll start with you here.
To keep it positive, I don't. I'll go with the answer. I'll go with a previous question. I'll say, what if Cade Povich comes out in spring and surprises all? Like, he implements all those changes I highlighted earlier. He's seen everyone on social media putting him in every single hypothetical trade package, and he just comes out ready to prove everyone wrong. Like, if somehow that were to happen, it wouldn't quiet anyone still likely to be angry the Orioles didn't land Fromber or trade for another arm. And if that combined with the Povich breakout somehow happened, like, it would go a really long way in really strengthening this rotation. Now, I think with the news tonight, maybe we're feeling a little bit more optimistic about another move being made. But I don't know. I've in preparation for this week's episode and some of these questions, I'm finding myself kind of buying into a fun season for Cade Povich in 2026.
This is a fun question. And man, if it wasn't for the rotation already being so packed, I love the example with Trey Gibson just balling out and making the opening day rotation. I don't like it because that means there's probably like 3 or 4 injuries in the rotation. But this is a fun question. My gut reaction is to go bullpen because I feel like there's always one surprise breakout bullpen kind of guy. Was Brian Baker last year, which resulted in us netting a comp pick, which led to Slater DeBrun, which led to Shane Baz. So that was a nice breakout last spring training. I will say, I want to say Anthony Nunez makes the team out of spring training in the bullpen and goes straight to the major league bullpen. But I could also see it being something like Yarmil Geraldo just comes out of nowhere and is like, makes a name for himself, wins that last bullpen spot over a Colin Selby or Keegan Aiken or maybe Yanir Cano, starts in AAA and has a great year. I also don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that Enrique Bradfield is like just so good defensively and made enough progress at the plate to hold his own. Maybe they think it's more valuable to have him as that 4th, 5th outfielder than getting regular time in AAA. I don't think that's what's going to happen, but I could see a world where that is the case.
Yeah, my immediate reaction when I saw this question is, if we're not factoring in injuries, there could be some chaos when it comes to the bullpen. I know that Ryan Helsley is going to be the closer. I think there's a couple of other guys in there that probably have their spots locked down, but you take someone like Dietrich Enns, who was good for the Orioles over the last couple of months of last season. If he doesn't have a good spring, and then someone like Yarmil Geraldo does, that could throw some things into chaos. I think Anthony Nunez is a guy that you can't rule out. That would be an aggressive push, but not one you can entirely dismiss out of hand. And I also wonder if there's a possibility that you have a catcher sneak their way onto the roster, at least for the beginning of the year, if the Orioles don't plan to put Basayo back there a whole lot. And looking at the Orioles 40-man right now, they only have 2 catchers, which is Rutzman and Basayo. But is there a possibility that a Maverick Hanley unexpectedly makes the opening day roster, or someone that's not even in the organization right now signs a minor league deal sometime in the next month and ends up making the opening day roster? I wouldn't rule that out, and I don't think it necessarily has to be tied to a bad thing outside of maybe a Tyler O'Neill injury, because now the Orioles feel like they're not going to put Basayo behind the plate that much in the beginning of the year. So let him ease in with the bat, and then you find your veteran depth option that maybe you don't want as your backup catcher all year, but if it helps with the transition from Basayo and that player is your backup for the first 2 months, you don't really lose anything.
Hey, remember the year the Orioles traded for Danny Coulomb on like the way from spring training to Baltimore, and then he made the opening day roster and became a dude for that team? That there's always a surprise. There's
It was a
always
lot
a
of fun
surprise.
too.
I like the Enrique Bradfield Jr. thing too. He also changed his profile photo and all his social media accounts to Stone Cold Steve Austin. So I think he's ready to open a can of whoop ass this year, and I'm here for it. I'm ready for that show. Bring back the old school wrestling vibes there. Last question, I believe, unless we've got some more in the chat or anybody else has dropped any. This is from EJ, who asked, "Who is your biggest prospect breakout candidate?" Continuing with the theme in 2026, and who is your biggest regression candidate, Zach?
So I'll stick with my breakout candidate from a few weeks ago, and that's Andrew Tess. I really thought that he had a positive season last year in the FCL, starting out as a young catcher, showing the plate discipline that he did, showing a pretty good hit tool. We unfortunately didn't get to see much of him in Delmarva because right after he was promoted there in August, only played about a week or two worth of games before getting hurt and missing the rest of the season. But there's a lot of positives there to like about Tess. Good hit tool. Seems like every report you read about him, every coach that has ever talked about him on the record has positive things to say about his leadership skills. So this looks like a guy that could legitimately stick as a catcher. Now, for my regression candidate, I went with a guy that is still not all that familiar to us, and I felt like maybe I was taking the easy way out, but we have to acknowledge this guy across the board did have a pretty good year. And that's Victor Figueroa, one of the players that came over in the Ryan O'Hearn, Ramon Laureano trade. Put up good numbers across the board between the Padres and Orioles systems last year. The problem was, though, that after the trade, he had been in low A Lake Elsinore before the trade. Comes over the Orioles system, goes to Aberdeen. His strikeout rate jumps from 20.3% at Lake Elsinore to 29.3% at Aberdeen. He did not hit a home run after the trade, so the power was not there. Now, he will be in Frederick. It's a more hitter-friendly environment, and the fact is this is still a relatively recent 22-year-old first baseman. So if he has a good year, he's at least going to be one of those guys we're tracking going into Chesapeake as a 23-year-old in 2027. But I question if the numbers that he put up last year between the two organizations are sustainable.
Yeah, there are a lot of people I've seen on social media, at least, that are like, they've tagged him as a potential breakout guy, and citing some of those numbers, they were in some very, very, very hitter friendly environments. So yeah, I have a lot of questions about that one too.
I'll start with the negative and say my regression candidate is Eber Cartaya. But just because I feel like he's in a tough development zone for pitchers. I feel like going from high A, I know he's not quite at double A yet, but I just feel like that is a pretty big jump. We saw Juan Nunez, and obviously injuries were a big part of that for Nunez. Struggle with that so far. And Edgar Portes, another guy that kind of looked like he was going to be pretty good, and then he kind of hit a wall there. And who knows, maybe that's injury related as well. But that's my regression candidate, just because I have a hard time predicting people are going to get worse. But my breakout candidate, though, is Levi Wells. Just telling the guys before we started this that someone on a Discord was asking who this question to me, and I picked Levi Wells just because I think he's up there with Trey Gibson and Luis De Leon as far as starting pitching prospects in this organization. I do think there's more. Here's the phrase you either love or hate, reliever risk with Levi Wells. But I think 2025 proved that he can start, and his stuff is up there with anyone in the minor leagues as far as starting pitchers go. If he can get the command down, the durability down a little bit, I think he's right there with Trey Gibson and borderline type top 100 guy. I think he's a potential mid rotation starter or maybe closer if he does go the bullpen route. So Levi Wells for me, I think is going to make a name for himself in 2026.
Hope so. Yeah, with Cartaya, the walk stuff, the control just didn't take the step forward. I think it needed to last year. My regression candidate, I also hate answering this one, especially in preseason time, but Yasmil Boucher, I'm never really been much of a fan of the bat. So I know he had a good year and there's some really good underlying data, but I'll say the little breakout he had last year, I could see him really struggling. Although going into Frederick, maybe he runs into some good power, but I think the strikeouts maybe are a little too much. And he's also in that weird zone where he has very limited high A experience right now, and he's a younger catcher, but he's going to be Rule 5 eligible, so he's also in that weird spot. My breakout candidate. So I have an article actually scheduled right now to go up on our Substack first thing Thursday morning on this pretty much topic. So I'm going to pick a different one, not to spoil that. And I will go with Colin Yeaman. I just did the top 50 episode on him over on our Patreon. Join, listen to all of them. They're all very good. But for all the reasons I outlined in there, like guy had no offers coming out of high school, went the JUCO route, had 2 surgeries on his shoulders, didn't get to play a ton, but still got an offer from UC Irvine, helped lead them to the NCAA regionals last year where he shined. It's a strong hit tool, above average power potential, didn't chase much, good at handling high velo, good bat to ball skills. And I think what we saw when he got to Delmarva at the end of the year, right after being drafted, was just exhaustion. 2025 was his first full year of baseball since high school. He played 60 something regular season college baseball games, plus conference tournament, plus NCAA regionals, gets drafted, goes to Sarasota. Congrats, you're a pro. Now go play with the Shorebirds. And that's probably a ton. And I think he needed the rest this offseason, see what he looks like in 2026. I think there would have been a lot more buzz around him if the Orioles didn't draft Ike Irish, Wahiva Aloy, and Caden Bodine all ahead of him. Even Slater DeBrun too. But the other 3 were all projected first round elite college performers across multiple seasons and bigger conferences. So I'll throw my name at Colin Yeaman there.
Before we wrap up, is there any further news that has happened on the hot stove tonight?
Some sad Brewers fans on the timeline, I'm seeing. That's
seeing like questions of what is the Orioles comparison as far as trade value, Jet Williams and Brandon Sproat. I said, or Sprott, I don't know how you pronounce it. I said, and it's so tough because there's not really exact parallels in our system, but I said Enrique Bradfield, Jet Williams, kinda, sorta, and Trey Gibson to Brandon Sproat, even though I think I would take Gibson easily over Sprott. But yeah, I would not have made this trade if I was the Orioles unless there was an extension already lined up, because that's a lot to give up. Mets can afford to do it because the owner will just buy whatever they want whenever they want. So good for them, but it's a lot for a 1-year rental.
Well, and before we wrap up tonight, I just want to say the person who commented on our YouTube recently that looks like Bob does the show from a prison cell, I got him beat tonight. So I normally can't claim that, but tonight I have him beat. And for that does it for this episode of Orioles on the Verge. We will be back next week. In the meantime, you can check us out on our many social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, YouTube, and Twitch. We're also over at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. And while you're browsing around the internet, be sure to head over to Patreon and become a member today to $3, $5, or $10 levels and have access to our top 50 prospects countdown. As I mentioned at the top of the show, we're just about approaching the top 30 now. So not only can you get the rest of the list from here, but you can go back and listen to the episodes that we've posted so far. You will also have access to our Patreon exclusive channels within our Discord community and bonus weekly coverage from Bob, Nick, and myself, and a whole lot more during the regular season. So be sure to check that out. Also check us out on Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, part of the Believe Podcast Network.